I've got a great book recommendation for you today. This is one of the top nonfiction books I've read in the last year or two. It is Thinking Fast and Slow by the Israeli psychologist Daniel Kahneman. This book is about two different things. It is about our intuitions and cognitive biases, and it is about what Daniel Kahneman calls System 1 and System 2 that our minds sort of have. And for simplicity, System 1 is our intuitive and automatic mind, and System 2 is our analytical and slow thinking mind. And I thought, Pat, we would do, just to give the audience an example of some of the things that are discussed in this book about how people often have an intuition about probabilities and statistics and understanding of the world, and that intuition is not always the most accurate, okay? So let's indulge me in a couple of different little exercises. Imagine, Pat, that we have a bat and a ball, a baseball bat and a baseball, which together cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost?
Without thinking too deeply into it, you would say the ball costs 10 cents.
Right. And if the ball costs 10 cents and the bat costs bat costs $1 more than the ball, how much does the bat cost?
Yeah, I got it wrong.
$1.10.
Yes.
Meaning the answer you gave is wrong. Most people give that answer because they see it and their intuitive mind says, I know the answer to that. The ball costs 10 cents, but the ball actually costs 5 cents, making the bat cost $1.05, making the total $1.10. There's a lot of science behind that, and Daniel Kahneman talks about that. Now, Pat has been a really good participant so far. Let's go to example number 2. Before the show, I gave Pat and Melody, our intern who's here, a list of 7 professions. And I said, I'm going to describe to you a 31-year-old woman named Linda, and I want you to rank the professions by which you think is most likely Linda's profession and which you think is least likely Linda's profession. Let's put up Melody's first while I read the problem. So we've got 7 professions here: engineer, math teacher, bank teller, astronaut, surgeon, bank teller and feminist activist, and librarian. And the description of Linda I gave is, Linda's a 31-year-old, single, outspoken, very bright woman. She majored in philosophy. As a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice, and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. And on screen, you will see that Melody thought that bank teller and feminist activist was the most likely profession, followed by surgeon, followed by bank teller, all the way on down to math teacher, which Melody thought would be the least likely profession for the person I described. I gave the same little test to Pat, and we'll put Pat's answers up on the screen. And as you can see, Pat thought that the most likely profession for Linda, as described, was bank teller and feminist activist, followed by astronaut, librarian, math teacher, engineer, bank teller, and surgeon. So let's keep this up on the screen, Pat, and let's focus in on this. Why did you believe that it was more likely that our imaginary friend Linda was an astronaut than a math teacher?
Well, we know she's a very intelligent young woman. Of course, if you're an astronaut, you have to be in that range where you're in your 30s or so, because that's the correct age. And she also has a background in philosophy, which made me think that she was more into deep thinking type roles rather than something that's more pragmatic, like being an engineer, for example.
Good.
Or
So
a bank
that's
teller.
good. That's good. So it was the characteristics of the description.
Yes.
What made you think that it was more likely that she was a bank teller and feminist activist versus a bank teller?
Because she's involved in social movements. She majored in philosophy. That was my reasoning behind that. But if you notice, the bank teller itself falls all the way down to number 6.
Right. Here is the cognitive bias that Pat is going to really feel dumb about, but there's nothing dumb. This is how the mind works. If I said to you, Joe is a person, what's more likely, that Joe has hair or that Joe has blonde hair?
That Joe has hair.
Why?
Because most people have hair, but most people do not have blonde hair.
In other words, blonde hair is a subset of hair.
Yes.
And in this case, we have someone who fits one characteristic, bank teller, and someone who is a subset of bank tellers, meaning a bank teller that is also a feminist activist. Mathematically, how could it be more likely that Linda is a bank teller and feminist activist versus just being a bank teller?
Interesting, yeah, because the only thing that stuck out to me was feminist activist, and I thought that was the thing that more correlates with her background.
This is what's called the conjunction bias that we have in our minds, where if there is a coherence to the story, we believe that we are making a more accurate assessment by saying, well, bank teller and feminist activist is more coherent based on the description. But it is mathematically impossible, because this is likely. What is more likely? It is impossible that a more narrowly defined category is more likely than a more broadly defined category.
I hope I'm not a bad person because of this.
You're not a bad person. Okay. No. Fascinating book. Okay. If this is interesting to you, get the book. You can find it on my list of recommendations at davidpakman.com/recommendations. I'm on Twitter at dpakman. Follow me there.